Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 1 Peace and Conflict Studies, Nature and Scope. In this unit, we are discussing some approaches to the study of peace, feminist approach, the political economy approach, the environment approach. Today we are going to discuss the environmental approach. The environmental approach to the study of peace points out that the unbalanced relationship of humans to bio-environmental system is a source of threat to human survival. Human beings have a unique capacity to damage the planet that supports life, support systems of the all species. Harm done to the earth and its enveloping environment forms an important area of investigating the conditions of peace. Growing attention had also been paid to the scarcity of environmental resources as a source of violent conflict. The global environmental degradation has led to the deteriorating quality of life in many parts of the planet. Greenhouse effects, river and ocean pollution, deforestation, and distortion of biodiversity are related to the expansion of human activities, which threaten life supporting ecosystems. Global warming associated with the greenhouse effect is caused by an accumulation of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen in atmosphere. This results mainly from the burning of fossil fuels by automobiles and industry. It is increased by the destruction of world forests that have the capacity to naturally remove carbon from the atmosphere. Gases such as chlorofluorocarbons (CFCs) used as coolant in refrigerators, solvents in industry, and propellants in aerosol sprays contribute to the destruction of stratospheric zone, resulting in the increased level of harmful solar rays. The ozone layer above the Antarctic has become thin and has a large hole. The impact of deforestation, desertification, pollution, overfishing, and overgrazing on the ecosystem threatens our planetary biodiversity. The loss of forest directly affects the world's biological diversity, causing mass extinction of huge numbers of plants and animals. The scarcity and misuse of fresh water pose another serious threat to human health, welfare, food security, and the entire ecosystem. Today, about one-fourth of the world's pollution lacks clear and safe water. Toxic chemicals and waste, as well as atmospheric pollution, have a major impact on the quality of water, as do agricultural use and deforestation. The rapid increase in population, especially in the third world countries, outstrips economic growth, deteriorates living standards, and results in severe environmental degradation. Hundreds of millions of poor people are forced to overgraze land and plunder forests. The carrying capacity of land, that is the number of people and area can support without compromising its ability to do so in future, has been rapidly deteriorating in the third world countries. The planet is gradually moving towards overloading the carrying capacity with a rapid growing population. Present consumption and production seriously hamper the long-term ability to support the region's resource base for future generations. The movement of water and air does not differentiate between national borders. Often, the irresponsible use of these common resources has created damage to the environment that belongs to others. For example, Scandinavian forests and lakes suffer from acid rain caused by industrial pollution in other parts of the Europe. Unregulated resources tend to become overutilized, and it leads to the destruction of the conditions for sustainable management. If community members pursue their own self-interest in seeking to maximize advantage, soon nothing will be left. The unregulated hunting of whales in the oceans until recently has led them to virtual extinction. Access to commons, that is commonly shared resources like the oceans and the outer space, have to be regulated to put a limit on private greed to protect the common goods. Now we discuss resource scarcity and conflict. Competition for limited or inequitable distributed resources may lead to violent conflicts. Threats to subsistent life caused by resource scarcity increase the probability of social unrest and war. The peasant majority is pushed to the most ecologically vulnerable land, while the top 2% of the total population controls more than 60% of land in Brazil. In many regions of the world where resources are not able to support the population, efforts to assert on prevent control over fertile cropland, forest, and water create conditions for intrastate and interstate conflict. Water conflict between Israel and Arabs is related to the use of water Jordan and is part of larger context of the conflict. Deteriorating resources based coupled with rapidly growing population produces a violent social situation for group conflict. Population dislocation can be caused by such environmental changes as deforestation, desertification, drought, soil erosion, and floods. In Africa, for instance, desertification has been a driving force behind the movement of ecological refugees across national borders. The population influx exceeding the capacity of the host environment contributes to group competition along with unequal access to scarce resources. Intense group identities are felt with the rising level of grievances. The weak state capacity to handle economic problems deepens fragmentation between the groups, increases in demand of various groups, put pressure on financial resources of the government. Failure or incapacity of the government to respond to demand from marginalized group lends support to the insurgencies that challenge the legitimacy of the state. Now let us discuss point environmental security. In recent years, mitigating the social and political impacts of environmental scarcity of resources has become an important national security concern. However, adding an environmental pillar to a national security agenda does not imply that policymakers have abandoned the traditional notions of security based on the use of force, if necessary, to preserve vital interests. While the conventional concept of security has exclusive concerns for the national level, security for the planet depends on the structure of the whole system. Peace on earth cannot be realized without ecological balance. Any attachment to the nation state and the conventional doctrine of security presents an obstacle to the sustainable management of the environment. In fact, the environment was brutalized by such violent tactics of warfare as scorched earth campaigns and weapons testing programs. Both the consumption oriented wealth of the industrialized world and the poverty of the developing world are leading to the environmental destruction. The destroyed environment in turn can ruin prospects for the future development of the rich and poor alike, leaving aside the prospect of global equality. The protection of the local as well as the global environment must be integral to the development process throughout our increasingly interdependent world. Sustainability cannot be achieved in one country since ecological problems do not recognize any borders. Sustainable development becomes a goal not just for the developing nations but for industrial ones as well. Now let us sum up the unit. We have examined the nature and context of peace and conflict by focusing on the two dominant conceptions of peace and conflict and three dominant approaches to the study of peace: the feminist, the political economy, and the environmental approaches. As we saw in the negative conception of peace, peace is the absence of direct violence, physical, verbal, and psychological, between individuals, groups, and governments. In the positive conception of peace, peace is more than the absence of violence. It is the presence of social justice through equal opportunity, a fair distribution of power and resources, equal protection, and impartial enforcement of law. Thus, while the negative conception of addresses the immediate symptoms, conditions of war, and the use and effects of force and weapons, peace, positive peace involves the elimination of the root causes of war, violence, and injustice. It also involves conscious efforts to build a society reflecting these commitments. Accordingly, the efforts of the adherents of these conceptions of peace to achieve peace differ. The former focus their efforts on managing interpersonal and organizational conflict in order to control, contain, and reduce actual and potential violence. In the international arena, they seek to reduce the incidence of war or prevent war through arms control and disarmament measures. Adherents of positive peace focus their efforts on establishing peace through world order by supporting international law, compliance with multilateral treaties, use of international courts, and non-violent resolution of disputes, participation in international organization, trade, and communication. They also emphasize on establishing social equality and justice, economic equity, ecological balance, and eliminate indirect violence by meeting basic human needs. The unit also examined the feminist political economy and environmental approaches to the study of peace, while the three approaches chosen for discussion differ in their emphasis on core concepts and concerns. They all assume the interconnectedness of all life and therefore can be categorized as alternative models of positive peace. Now we want to wind up this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thank you so much for your attention.